Hey, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. We'll give folks a minute to come in and find their place. Of
Zoom
course, as
lets
soon,
everyone
soon
one at a time.
Zoom seems to let people in single file,
Oh,
but number is growing. So thank you all for being here today. We have an interesting conversation in store. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and particularly AI assisted innovation and how to responsibly navigate the USPTO's latest inventor guidance and generative AI guidance. And we have a great panel. This program is sponsored by IP.com. So thank you to IP.com for being one of our longtime supporters. We really appreciate that. And Renee, why don't we just take it away and we will introduce the panel if we can.
fun. All right. So today's panel is made up of first Joe Manico. He's been with Eastman Kodak Company since 1975. He later moved to Kodak's research and development labs and began collaborating with other inventors and filing patents on new inventions. The patent portfolio he contributed to the company includes inventions in digital image processing, film and digital cameras, innovative digital displays, printers, and print finishing systems. In 2013, he was identified as one of the primary contributors to Kodak's patent portfolio, which was sold for $525 million. After the sale, he joined Kodak's Alaris as a research scientist and currently, as an innovation consultant, continues to help protect corporate research investments with intellectual property. Next, we have Christopher Campbell. He is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Simplify Automation Incorporated, which he founded in 2018 as an automation and low voltage design company. He has over 25 years of proven experience in electrical automation and engineering, where he served as operations and sales manager for several of the nation's largest electronic systems integration firms, as well as being a nationally recognized electrical systems integration engineer. Christopher is also a theologian with a passion for healthy communities. Next, we have Jim Durkin. He is the managing director of product development at IP.com, where he works with IP.com's development team to enable AI assisted workflow solutions related to IP.com's insight reports, as well as IP.com's innovation discovery and AI driven search platform Innovation Q and its flagship prior art database for defensive publication. He is a registered patent attorney, an inventor, and former primary patent examiner for the USPTO in the area of graphical user interface. He also has a BS in computer science. And last but not least, we have our moderator, Gene Quinn. He's a patent attorney and a leading commenter on patent law and innovation policy. He founded IP Watchdog in 1999, 25 years, and since has twice been named one of the top 50 most influential people in IP, and has repeatedly been recognized as one of the top IP strategists in the world. So you're in great hands with this panel. Back to you, Gene.
Great. Thanks a lot, Renee. And thank you all for being here again. And gentlemen, we have a lot to cover, and I think probably the best thing that we could do is jump right into it. We're going to be talking about responsible use of generative AI tools. And we're going to start with, I guess, the USPTO's latest inventorship guidance. Jim, let me ask you your thoughts on that, and I'll ask Chris and Joe as well. What's going on with the guidance that's come out over the last few months? Have you seen anything interesting as a developer here? What do you want people to understand?
Sure. Well, first, I'd like to start with the PANU case. And really, in that case, there's three significant factors to consider. You have to contribute in a significant manner to the conception or reduction to practice of an invention. You have to make a contribution to the claimed invention that is not insignificant in quality when measured against the invention as a whole. And importantly, and this is where it really distinguishes from generative AI, you have to do more than merely explain to inventors well-known concepts or the current state of the art. So if I had to boil that down into just one rule, I'd say it's a significant human contribution is what we're talking about here in order to satisfy the inventorship standard. And I do believe that AI can be used in that regard. And really, I think it's going to end up becoming so commonplace, it'll be no different than using a calculator, for example. And really, the PANU test is a recognition of the fact that you can use AI to assist in the invention disclosure process and still have a patentable invention.
Mhm. Okay, great. And Joe, you're an inventor. You have we're just talking about some of your patents and inventions. What has caught your mind or attention as to what the PTO is doing or saying with regard to AI assisted tools?
Well, I don't know specifically what their motivations are, but I think it's just being a big organization, they just want to move cautiously. But my experience has been that this is just another tool like a word processor, a search engine, and spell correct. If you really have to know what you're looking for and what you're trying to accomplish in order to guide the AI, AI is not going to guide you. And so I look at it just as another series of powerful tools.
Mhm. Okay, great. And Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the key word is tool. So we're not using AI to do the thing for us. We're using it to assist us in doing what we're already doing. So I think that their regulations is really to keep it as a tool and not as the complete generator. Because then who's responsible for creating the thing? So I think as long as we keep it in the confines of it being assisted with AI and not done by I think that's the spirit of what they're trying to relay here.
Mhm. Okay, great. And so we have a poll question here about this. Maybe what we should do is get the audience engaged and involved right away and ask them the poll question here. Um, all right, so let's launch this poll question. Can everybody see that? Did it come up? Yep, looks like it's there.
Yes, you can see it.
Okay, so how has the PANU case influenced your approach to joint inventorship, if at all? We'll give folks a minute to answer this. Does anybody want to make any predictions as to what people are going to be saying here? Uh, Jim?
Well, honestly, I think it has kind of a minimal impact, at least from my perspective, because it's really just restating the practices that everyone was already doing. I mean, significant human contribution and conception of the idea. We've always understood that there has to be a requirement for conception, not a mere reduction to practice. And there's really no change in that sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of the audience saying that it hasn't had a huge impact on them.
Okay. And that is in fact what we got here. So trying to share the results. Are they coming up? My computer's acting weird all of a sudden. Can you see the results?
Not yet.
Okay. So I guess
I can
uh
share the results. Let's see here. Let's share the results.
so, yeah, I'm
Can anyone see them now?
no, it doesn't seem to be working. So I'll just let folks know that minimally was the largest, uh, received the most votes. If 44% of people say that it is caused only minor adjustments, and the next largest was 33%. A third of people said that it hasn't changed their approach at all, and only 3% of people said that it has changed their approach significantly and led to more stringent criteria for development of joint inventorship. So I suppose that is probably what we anticipated, I guess. So any surprises there, guys?
No.
No. Okay. Joe, you are on mute. Did you try and
Yeah,
say something?
I guess my statement is I think the advantages so far outweigh any concerns that I just think it's a temporary situation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably the case here. So let's go on to the next issue here that we have teed up, which is about ensuring that there is that significant human contribution. Jim, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, that's really the core of the test, and you have to have the significant human contribution in order to be listed as an inventor. I would note another little subtlety in this test is that a mere reduction to practice of an idea conceived by another person is not enough to constitute an inventorship. And I think we all know that. So just a reminder that that is the rule with respect to inventorship. And significant human contribution is really where you're building on top of the generative AI. You know, it's like Chris said earlier, the AI isn't doing all the work. It's acting as an assistant. So when it gives you back information, you have to think about it yourself and think about, well, what are the real inventive improvements that I want to make on this idea, and then put that forward.
Mhm. Chris, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, how do you go about making sure that there is the sufficient human interaction?
Well, my personal experience is that AI doesn't give you everything you would need to make a patent anyway. It's going to give you great ideas and great concepts that you can then develop into a patentable product. But from my experience, it gives great ideas and it could give you innovation paths that you wouldn't have thought of on your own. And that's the value for me is like, okay, I know we still have to figure out how this is done and how it's inventive, but I wouldn't have thought about that particular path if it weren't for that assistant. So for my experience, it's more about guidance and direction than about necessarily invention and taking innovative ideas on a product we're already working on that it would have took my engineering team maybe several months to come up with that list of innovations. So for us, it's a building block that we can then transform into something that's unique and that is patentable and not just a concept.
Hmm. Okay. And Joe, when we were in the green room, you were talking a little bit about this, specifically about using it to generate ideas, not maybe to invent so much, but to push you in certain directions.
Yeah, I was doing some experiments, and I don't want to talk about anything that's confidential. So I was doing some experiments with kayaks, because I like kayaks, and I was working on the notion of a paddleboard and convertible to a kayak. And and obviously you need to, with a sit upon kayak, you still need to have a divot for the for you to sit down when you're going to use it as a kayak. And working interactively with the ip.com tool, it's coming up with recommendations like, that extra material could be used for, forming a seat back and whatnot. And something I might have come around to thinking about later, but it was like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, that is a good use for that excess material that I'll have to remove in order to convert it into a kayak. Now it can flip up as a seat back, and wasn't even a direction I was considering. And yeah, then but again, you have to engineer it, you have to plan it, you have to design it to make it work. That's the human part of it.
Yeah.
And I just also wanted to comment too that and then when you go to see, gee, is this even patentable? Then it turns it over to the real world where, now I have a great start for finding actual patents out there that might have these features. And sure enough, I did find them right away. Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So we have a question here from somebody in the audience, and it's how would the PTO know if the AI has significant contribution as an inventor? What is the PTO perspective? I mean, one of the things that I, I think probably what the question is getting to is what difference does any of this make? Because how are they going to know anyway whether the AI was the inventor or the AI contributed or things like that? And Jim, do you have any thoughts on that? I have an answer, but I'd like to
Well,
get.
I mean, in theory, they can make a rejection under section 101 or 115. So it's possible that it could occur. However, as a practical matter, I don't think they're going to have a lot of the information. They're going to presume that the inventorship is correct on the application. They're going to read it with that, in their minds. And I don't think, as a practical matter, we're going to see a lot of cases where the PANU factors are raised. I don't know how you feel, Gene, but in theory, they could make a rejection.
Yeah, I don't think the office is going to be in a position to be making these types of rejections. Um, the system works based on people telling the truth and being honest about it. So if you are applying for a patent, for example, on something, an innovation that was strictly 100%, I don't think we're there yet, but 100% made by AI, um, the office is probably never going to know. They're not going to know unless you tell them. The bigger issue isn't getting it through the office. I think the bigger issue is having an asset that winds up being able to stand the test of time and in challenges. Because while the examiner is engaging in an ex parte process, and you may be able to pull the wool over the eyes of the examiner, if you are doing that sort of thing, it fundamentally undercuts the value of the asset. And if we get to the point where the PTO has got some very specific requirements for disclosure when you are using AI, for example, and you don't come clean and you don't say that, then you're committed inequitable conduct, and nothing you get is worth anything. And the nightmare scenario from the patent perspective isn't having an examiner tell you, no, you can't patent this. The nightmare perspective is getting it past the examiner not saying anything. Then when you go to litigate, now somebody is going to dive deep, because if you're litigating about it, these things can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars easily, some inventions. And that's when the thread gets pulled. You know, you have that much money at stake, people will find a way to figure out what you did and how you did it. So it's self-authenticating, I suppose, on some level. You know, the penalty is so gigantic that you just can't run the risk. Joe, I see you shaking your head.
So it doesn't matter unless it matters. It's like everything with patents. You know, many of them are probably invalid, and you don't. I have a saying. I said all patents are invalid until they've been litigated or licensed, and
Yeah,
that's my attitude with them. And so I agree with your point completely.
yeah. Chris, any thoughts?
I would have to agree with Joe. It's gonna, like I said, it's gonna matter when it really matters. But risk mitigation, you're gonna have to figure that out now and not allow that to be an open risk to where you are looking to license it or litigate it. Then it falls apart because you didn't disclose how much of a contribution AI put forward. Even though, from my experience, I don't know that AI is at the point yet where it can do an entire invention. At
Right.
least from what I've seen, it's more for innovating what you're already doing and creating ideas, not necessarily going to give you a text sheet on exactly how to do it and what the principles are, and something that could be, sent in as a patent straight out.
Yeah, Jim, is that your understanding? I know you guys work very closely with this and with people who are users and stuff. Are you seeing AI really is only currently useful as not the end all be all inventor, but as that facilitation of inventions and idea generation?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a lot of what we're talking about is almost a little bit theoretical because the AI is not at the point where it can do an entire invention in and of itself to begin with. So I would agree with Chris 100% on that. You're still going to have that significant human contribution.
Mhm.
And one other nuance I should note about PANU is that when you're talking about that inventorship, it's done on a claim by claim basis. So it can actually vary potentially for different aspects of the invention. And you need that significant human contribution for all the claims in order for it to stand up.
Yeah, and that's something that I was talking about AI the other day, and one of the things that I raised was, what obligations do you think people have, or if not an obligation, what do you think they should be doing, best practices in order to ensure that they can tell what came from the AI and what came from an individual? Because again, as you go through prosecution, you might file claims, and maybe the AI is really a co-inventor based on where we're at right now. But if you take out all the claims that the human contributed to, and you're only left with stuff that the AI put in, that under current law would be problematic. So, I mean, how much documentation do you think is best practice? Do you need to have your search terms or document who came up with what and what is associated with the AI?
I think it's a little early to say, Gene, but I will say that one functionality we have in our software to help mitigate this issue is a notes feature where you can put in your ideas specifically, and we'll distinguish in that kind of list of what we have as our notes, things that are tagged by the AI versus the ones that you've entered yourself. So I think at a minimum, something like that is probably a good idea, but we're kind of in untested waters here. As we alluded to at the beginning of the call, PANU doesn't come up very often, and maybe that's going to change with the increased prevalence of generative AI, but it's early days here still.
Yeah, early days. Chris, I saw you shaking your head. Do you want to
Yeah,
add your
that's
thoughts?
exactly what we do. We get, all of our information goes into the notes. And then when we distinguish what parts were generated by AI and what parts were generated by engineers, that's like a quick way for us to glance and say, well, everything in the notes was what we took the building blocks that were given to us by AI and then built the thing with those building blocks. Because that's how we're looking at generative AI, as a collector of Legos, a collector of building blocks that we then take and engineer into a thing. So I think that's how we're doing it right now, is putting those original concepts in the notes section so that we can easily delineate between the two.
Hmm. So we have a question from Phil, who is talking about relying on AI for conception, and and then the humans to figure out how to do it. And that's dangerous for inventorship. And I said, I'm not sure that's what we're saying. I don't think what we're talking about is using AI to conceive, as much as what we're talking about is using AI to create ideas for the human who then moves forward with it. Is that correct,
Gene,
Joe?
the way I would describe it is, if you've been to a brainstorming session, you could get a facilitator that shows up from an outside organization. He may or may not be knowledgeable in what's going on, but he's going to move the brainstorming session along. He's going to provide documentation. This tool here is like having the world's best facilitator there, documenting everything, plus being very knowledgeable about the field of art, regardless of what it is. So the metaphor I would use is like, it's like having one of the best innovators at your disposal, doing the documentation and the guidance too. When you hit a rough spot, they're going to throw out some wild ideas. That's exactly what this does.
So, Gene, I think a good way to frame this is, if you think about generative AI might tell you something like improve a sensor, but it's not going to tell you how to do it. And it's not going to conceive of the improvement itself. You're going to then read that and say, oh, well, I should maybe consider improving the sensor, but you're going to conceive of that idea. And as I said earlier, a mere reduction to practice of an idea that came up that was conceived by an AI. Yeah, I think that would be problematic under PANU. But that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about using AI to help spur your thought when you're still conceiving of the idea yourself.
So do you suppose that AI is ever going to be able to really be an inventor, like the conceiver, in the way that we as humans are and the law has required? And the reason I ask that is because the way that the AIs, at least currently, the generative AI works is it's not actually programmed to try and find the right answer. It's programmed to find an answer to your question. And what it's doing is as it starts to answer, it's trying to accurately predict what the next word should be based on your question and what it's answering and all these kinds of inputs. And if all you're trying to do is predict what the next word is, and output the next appropriate word, you wind up with I just don't see that leading to the AI inventing these things, Joe.
I don't think that's a fair analogy. I think it's more like this giant pile of words, and looking for giant piles of words that kind of have the same basic structure and meaning. So I don't think it's the next word. I think that's an old analogy. There's more going on than that.
Mhm.
I think you're, in terms of the AI that can just be creative all on its own, well, stuff like that's at least a year off. So we don't have to worry about that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So Joe, just to go back to what is the AI, how would you describe what AI, the pile of words? Can you elaborate on that a little bit for folks?
I'm just astonished by the things that it apparently understands, and the pseudo creativity it does have. Like, I can sit there with GPT, for instance, say, write a little poem about my granddaughter, and it will, and it'll be fine. So, but in terms of complex things, how things work, huge money you want to invest in a new engine and stuff like that, I don't think we're talking about that level of creativity right now. I think we're talking about, what do I do with this extra material? It'll give you 5 great ideas what to do with that extra material, but
Mhm.
it's not going to tell you how to go about those things. It's just like a spark you'd have from a facilitator at a brainstorming session. It will introduce new ideas that you might not consider, like the TRIZ methodology, that Russian technique for invention. It's a structured ideation process. And so now you're not having to deal with the variabilities of which facilitator do we get this time. You're always going to have the best facilitator, and it's going to be very knowledgeable about whatever topic you bring to it, because that's access to the internet and all that information.
Mhm. Okay. And Chris, just want to give you an opportunity to chime in if there's anything that you want to comment on.
Well, I like when Joe put it, it's a spark. And that's the way we view it. It's gonna instigate ideas. It's gonna instigate a process that you like, that you wouldn't have necessarily went down on your own, but it's not gonna have to tell you exactly how to do it. And I think that's a value. It's a drawback in terms of, yeah, it requires us to do the work. But to me, it's not meant to be the solution. It's meant to be the tool to the solution. So that spark, that idea is kind of that's a huge value there, because those sparks are what instigate innovation. And those paths that you go down to based upon that spark is where the value is. So I mean, I would agree totally. It's a great way to take a starting point and push it forward, but it's not going to take you to the result. That's something we still have to engineer and we still have to put together.
Yeah. Yeah. And quite frankly, I wonder, I think we're quite a ways away from AI being what we have heretofore under the law considered an inventor. Because we're still not yet at the place where you can ask AI a historical question and reliably know that it's going to give you the right answer every time. And it's a much higher level of learning and output and sophistication to say, okay, based on all of the stuff that you've ingested in your knowledge base, where's the point of novelty? Where's the creativity? Where's that aha moment when it can't even tell you for certain without needing to be checked historical fact right now?
Gene,
Yep.
people can't do that.
Right. No,
No, people can't do that at all.
Right.
Which historian are you talking to? You'll get a totally different story. But
right.
that's the beauty of invention. We're talking about real stuff, things that will it work or not. That's the beauty of this thing.
Yeah. And just as you were saying that, will it work or not? I wonder though, because there is this appreciation, probably the best way to say it, that the best inventions that you're going to have are going to be the most creative, most groundbreaking are going to be when you're younger. And all of the great innovators across time have innovated when you're young. Einstein, Newton was in his late 30s when he had his last real groundbreaking, which is pretty old to have a truly enormously groundbreaking fundamental innovation. And one of the things that a lot of folks will say and think is that you get to a certain, not that you're not going to contribute, not that you're not going to innovate, not that you're not going to come up with stuff, but you get to a certain point where you're so, the rules so well. Oh, you can't do A because of B. You can't do C because of D. Whereas at the beginning of your career, you're not trying, well, why is that? Why can't I do A and B at the same time? And then you try and make those things work. And sometimes that curiosity and creativity leads to great things. I wonder whether AI is ever going to be able to do that. Any thoughts on?
My initial
Well, I
impression.
think, oh, sorry.
Well, my initial impression is that generative AI won't be able to do that. General AI may be able to, because if you're just taking information and processing and organizing it as generative AI does, I don't know that you're going to get that real all the way through innovation and process that you will once it's general, because the general is meant to think more like a human, to think and to process and to give something new. Whereas in my perspective, generative is taking something that already exists, information that already exists, and presenting it in a certain way. So I think until we get several orders of magnitude deeper into AI, that it's going to be human based.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the experts that in AI that I've talked with saying very much similar type things. And the things to look for are the neural networks, the advancing of the neural networks and the brain machine interface. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff that has to happen before we get to the point where we were all afraid of about a year ago or 18 months ago that AI was going to rule the world, right? Very well could happen, but we're not there yet. So this probably gives us a good segue, Jim, to talk about, well, what does AI do now today That is very good. That is very usable. That does facilitate in a concrete way in this ideation process. Um, do you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah. I think
And do you want me
AI
to put
is,
the
oh,
PowerPoint slide
oh
back
yeah,
on?
actually that would be great. Maybe this is
Okay.
a good opportunity for that.
Okay. There we go.
So, uh, one of the solutions that we offer that can help with this question is IQ Ideas Plus 3.0, and it's an ideation and problem solving platform. It's meant to help advance your IP strategy through accelerated innovation. It leverages our industry unique CompassAI technologies, which is the generative AI component, as well as our proprietary and patented semantic GIST search engine. It can evaluate solutions for novelty using artificial intelligence and patented technologies, and ultimately help save time, money, and resources. But this is just one example of the types of programs that are available today that leverage both semantic AI and generative AI. So if you can go to the next slide. Um, our solution, Compass AI with IPS meta technology, uses generative AI but focuses it using established inventive principles to help provide relevant results. And we have customized meta prompting that we give to the system in order to give good results and have intelligence assistance in the platform. And then I would note that it is secure and we're an ITAR compliant company at IP.com, which is good if you have any export controlled inventions. And then next slide. And really, in terms of this software, this is an example of class of software that's available. It's geared towards all different types of users, from inventors and engineers to IP consultants and advisors. And Gene, this might be a good point in time to introduce my colleague, Chris Irick, who's going to do a demonstration of IQ Ideas Plus so we could see it in action.
Sure, sure. Let me stop sharing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Irick. I'm the CMO for IP.com. And in the next few minutes, I'd like to walk you through a workflow, a use case of how to use our generative AI technology known as CompassAI for structured ideation and problem solving. I'm going to go ahead and get started by clicking IQ Ideas and go to New Project, Solve a Problem. The particular problem that I'm trying to solve today is the following. The current systems and methods for detecting, monitoring, and containing forest fires are insufficient, which is true. I think this is a pretty good problem statement as an engineer, but we could use Compass AI technology here to assess that problem statement. A good problem statement ultimately needs to be actionable. And so Compass AI comes back with 5 different vectors it looks at: clarity, scope, measurability, context, and relevance. My scores are good. They're not necessarily great. And so Compass AI gives an example of a well-written problem statement. I'm going to go ahead and use that and click next. And every problem statement would have a set of root causes behind it. I'm going to use Compass AI to generate those. And here we are. As an engineer, these are the same ones I had. You can either use these or use your own or use a mix of the two. Click on next. Then Compass AI comes back with a set of ideas. Inventive and creative, our own semantic gist engine comes back with a set of non-patent literature and literature results that are relevant to the problem that you're trying to solve. So, for example, welfare policy management in England, an evolving response from fire and rescue services. If you're wanting to see how this particular piece of non-patent literature is relevant to the problem, go ahead and hit applicability. Compass AI goes through the entire document, processes it, relates it back to that prompt statement, and tells you exactly how this relates. If I like that, I can bookmark it. Smart response systems for city emergencies, I like that. And I like this. So I'm going to bookmark a number of these. Then I'm going to go over to inventive ideas. And these are based off the 40 inventive engineering principles. So for example, feedback is one of them. And if you want to see how you would apply this inventive principle feedback to your problem, once again, go ahead and hit applicability. Okay, I like what it came back with. I'll go ahead and bookmark this. I can also look for more ideas like this. I can bookmark another one here. And then last but not least, the creative ideas. Here's an interesting one. AI detection systems implement advanced artificial intelligence technologies to detect early signs of forest fires. I like this. Also, the drone surveillance. I can get more ideas like this or get guidance on how I would apply it. And here we are. To successfully implement advanced artificial intelligence for detecting early signs of forest fires, the following is recommended. And so I can also ask CompassAI to drill down into any one of these. Give me examples of real-time monitoring. Give me examples of implementing a community involvement plan. So I can continue to engage CompassAI to go broader and deeper into any one of these topics. So I like that. I like this. I'm going to go ahead and bookmark this. In many cases, when you're trying to solve a problem, when you're trying to find creative solutions, you may not necessarily be looking to generate intellectual property. In some cases, you are. So if I go back up here and I look at my notes, I have a series of notes that I've bookmarked along the way from my existing inventive and creative ideas. Often the best solutions are a combination of these together. And it just so happens that after looking at this as an engineer, I have a unique idea that I'm putting together inspired by these three different areas. All right, so I want to enter a new idea, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the title. AI-powered sensors throughout forests that analyze weather and vegetation data. I have what I believe to be a unique solution idea that I put together. And I'm going to hit save. And I want to go ahead and analyze this idea. Our system comes back, says it's a pretty good reading level. However, the concept may need improvement. The best way to know is to further analyze the invention. The analysis screen shows me that while I might have a usable, viable solution, it is not novel and unique. Here's the patent literature, non-patent literature that's most closely related to my idea, relevant patent activity, and I can also create a C-suite ready analytics report that I can share with the research director on what I've put together and what I found. Here's the technology vitality report with my novelty score, prior art and patent activity, and more that I can send to that research director. So in the past few minutes, I've walked through entering a problem statement and using CompassAI to improve it, to help me find the root causes behind that problem, and to generate a set of ideas from related prior art, from inventive principles and creative ideas that I put together in what I believe to be a unique way with significant human contribution to create a solution that I could then evaluate and send to my management. And so with that, I'll wrap up and send it back to the IP Watchdog team. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks a lot, Chris. That was, I think, very, very helpful. Chris, Campbell, or Joe, do you have any thoughts or anything you want to share based on what we just saw? Go ahead,
Sure.
Chris. Yep.
So this is what we use day in and day out right now. And the use case that we use it for is pretty unique. Our specialty as an engineering company is assisting companies who want to commercialize federal technologies from the federal laboratories. And so we work with companies to identify technologies in the federal laboratory space that they can use in an invention they're already creating or a product they're already creating. So part of that is analyzing the technology, seeing how they can be built upon, and then how they can be integrated into that company's idea or their concept. So the time that we save in being able to analyze the idea and being able to find the prior art and make an intelligent decision is extremely valuable. And that's something that we wouldn't necessarily do with a chat GTP for privacy reasons. We're, highly concerned with putting out information that's proprietary or that could be proprietary into a system that will be shared with everyone else who does a search in the next following weeks. So for us, these tools are extremely valuable. They're relatively easy to use, they're easy to start with, and they allow us to provide a service to our clients that, saves a lot of time and energy because we're getting straight to the innovation part and we're cutting through the clutter by using this tool. So we're definitely excited to be able to explore it. And our clients are finding a huge value because we're able to deliver something that has a metric to it, that has, okay, this is the patentability as it's analyzed from your existing technology, and here are the innovations that we can add to it to enhance that patentability. And so it's the combination of technologies that really is a powerful tool. So that process, is something that we really enjoy using and we're finding a lot of value in.
Yeah.
I would
Joe, your thoughts?
I would just like to add that when I work with engineers in the olden days, it used to be a handoff. You'd have your ideas and then you'd deal with the patent people. What I like here is that's integrated into the process. And as you go, everything is documented. You don't have to rely on a scribe. You don't have, and if you're working with a group or by yourself, it's a much more efficient process than being in a room with a bunch of Post-it notes and people writing notes. It's having again the world's best facilitator and scribe right there at your desk or at a meeting location, and that you're dealing with patents as you're as you're developing the ideas and inventing. So it's not going to be a big surprise after you spent weeks developing this idea and now you want to hand it over to somebody to do a patent search. And you're going to get it's a very inefficient process to do it iteratively like that when you could be doing it all at once. And it makes a huge difference for efficiencies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Jim, we have a question here that asks about what protocols are in place to prevent the AI from making up references like we've seen happen. And when we were in the green room, we were talking about this a little bit. And your tool doesn't just use ChatGPT 4. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on and what kind of reliability hurdles or thresholds you've incorporated?
Yeah, that's correct. So our tool is not just a generative AI, although it has generative AI capabilities, as you saw during Chris's demonstration. But we also leverage a semantic AI. So we've developed our own search engine here at IP.com. It's called Semantic Gist. And we use that Semantic Gist search engine to retrieve the closest patents and non-patent literature. So when Chris was going through the software and you saw the patents and non-patent literature coming up, that's all from our semantic AI engine as opposed to the generative AI. So there's absolutely zero risk of hallucination. And even on the generative AI side, we incorporate our meta prompting technology, IPS Meta, to help reduce the risk of hallucinations when you're asking it general questions on the generative AI side. But that's really the advantage of our system, is that it's a hybrid. It's not just a generative AI, it's also a semantic AI, which is a very powerful search engine to retrieve patents and MPL without any risk of hallucination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's so critically important is to have guardrails to make sure that you're getting reliable information. So okay, we have another poll question, and now is probably a good time to launch that poll question. Let me go ahead and do that. And it should be active now, I believe. Oh, no. And now it should be active. Oh, I've clicked launch. Do you guys see the poll question or?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Zoom is acting very weird today.
No, I don't see it either.
I will say.
Okay.
Um,
Is it the joint inventorship one?
it's the general AI and inventorship process.
Okay, let me try
And
it again. Hold on.
I'm not able to launch it.
Hold on.
It's funny that we're talking about AI and today, and we're having these issues because one of the things that was bugging me at the beginning, and I don't know why computer systems do it, but they all do it. The way that it worked yesterday is not going to likely be the way it works today for you. And when I went to put on the PowerPoint presentation, normally it goes up in presentation and presenter view, and when I was clicking share, it would like immediately shrink my screens and then mirror them, and there was nothing I could do to stop that from happening in the share. And it's like this is we are we're at the dawn of a really interesting time, I think, where things, when they go really smoothly, they work very, very well, and when they don't go very smoothly, then some interesting things happen. And which is why one of the other things, Jim, we were talking about in the green room a year ago, everybody was afraid that this was going to take their job away. And that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is these tools are being used and very good for certain things. And if you use them for where they're good at, like for example, the ideation process that Chris just walked us through, it really allows the humans' knowledge and creativity to be leveraged, to be ratcheted up a notch or two at least, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's one of the reasons that the term augmented intelligence has become so popular, because it's really what it's doing is it's augmenting the human ingenuity. It's not replacing the human or taking them out of the equation. So I would agree 100% with that, Gene.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I want to comment. Oh, well, we just got it up now.
Hold on.
That's the first
Yeah,
question
hold on a
we've
second.
already
I'm
answered.
working on it. Bear with me.
Okay.
Okay,
There we
it's
go.
up now.
Okay. So if you guys could take a moment to do that question, Chris, you were saying?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of comment on the issue of hallucinations, because from our perspective, that's the reason that we didn't use ChatGPT 4 directly, is because, and we even did a comparative analysis last week using IP.com and then using several other chatbots. And what we found is that the prevalence of hallucinations, especially when it comes to citing patents, was overwhelming. In fact, we found that about out of the 10 that were cited, 4 of them were not even real. And then the other ones were cited, but not in the true context in which we were searching. And then when we looked at what we searched with ib.com, and it was all actionable, it was all real, and it gave us a certain confidence that we wouldn't have had or wouldn't even have tried with a off the shelf generative AI platform. A, because of privacy, and then B, because of reliability. We couldn't rely on the information that was fed back. And then we end up having to search the information that was sent back in order to validate its credibility. And that would prevent, I think, any inventor from using those platforms directly without having those guardrails in place.
Yeah. Joe?
I wanted to add that Jim mentioned semantic gist. I don't know if people are familiar with it, but that's the front end for the Innovation Q patent search product. And it works in plain English. I literally will have engineers come to my desk, describe their invention to me while I'm typing it into Innovation Queue, and I'll instantly have patents rated by relevancy, in the order of relevancy it's always right on. It's scary how accurate it is. So, and that's the non-hallucinating part of the system.
Yeah. So can you guys see the poll results here now? So
Yep.
The largest response was no, we don't provide guidance, but we're planning on developing guidelines. And then next was yes, but still developing. And then right behind that was no, and we don't provide, and we don't anticipate providing guidance. Does this come as a bit of a surprise to anyone, or about what you expected?
I'm a little surprised by the 25% that say that we don't provide any guidance on this topic and they're not planning on developing guidelines. I think that you may want to reconsider that approach, because it's an area that's only going to continue to grow. I mean, I said at the beginning of the call that I think generative AI technologies are going to become as prevalent as using a calculator, and I stand behind that statement. So I'm a little surprised that there's such a high percentage that are not considering it at all.
Yeah. Joe, it looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, we have a corporate policy. We have to use the approved AI, and we can't use any other AIs doing any work for the company. So mid-sized companies already have, many of them already have policies in place about AI, because and this would overcome that, because it's self-contained. It's not like going out to the major ones where you could train them, and that's the problem. You don't want to train them with your new inventions.
Yeah, no, I think that you folks are going to have to. I don't think this is a put your head in the sand moment. I think you need to be paying attention. And I say this whenever we talk about AI. It's not just pay attention today. It's, pay attention tomorrow, pay attention next week, pay attention next month, because these things are changing, and the way that you can use these tools are evolving very rapidly. The government and the courts are not going to be able to keep up with this. And the one thing that we do definitely see, just strictly from a patent professional standpoint, is whenever there's new opportunities, new technologies, there's also an obligation to make sure that your clients understand what's going on and they know what you're using and how you're using it and so forth. And that's both an ethical and really a practical obligation. I think, the duty of competence and diligence and communication, those together require you, I believe, to talk to your clients about what it is that you're using and making sure that they're on board with what you're using and how you're using it. But then I've also talked to some in-house people who have said that if a firm were using AI tools and they were not made aware of that would be very bad, that they would, not feel comfortable using that firm perhaps moving forward. So there is, I think, an obligation, practical and ethical, to have conversations with clients and to talk to them about what you're using, and then consequently also learning about what they're doing and what their comfort level is. And different clients are going to have different comfort levels. And I also think that a lot of this, certainly as Chris was saying, there's a big benefit to using these tools, the curated tools like IP.com has, because they're using the best of generative AI, and then they're using the best of their semantic and natural language searching abilities, and they're marrying these together, and that in and of itself is reducing a lot of the problems that you see when you just go to ChatGPT, for example, online. Would you guys agree with all that, or what do you think?
I definitely agree. I think it's so risky, especially if you're dealing with a client. It's so risky to put their information into an AI platform that doesn't have guardrails. And to me, that's it's a liability that, as a customer, I would be very upset if I found that my proprietary data in your hands is being put into a system that now is available to everybody, and you've just reduced the potential of us getting to the mark first. So I think and then not knowing what you're using. So if you don't have any policy at all and you don't understand how risky the tools you are using are, then I think it's putting your company in a risk as well as your client. So I think that's something that, we definitely should reconsider. And there should be, at this point, there should be a baseline policy in place that at the very least steers you away from the known risks. Like using ChatGPT 4 would be a known risk right now without those guidelines. So I think using them without knowing that would be problematic now and then certainly in the future.
Yeah.
I'd like to add, there's another in our non-articulated risk here too, not using an AI in your organization, because you're going to be at an extreme competitive disadvantage in the near future. And again, I just found, using just the GIST software for patent searching, I built a career around that, and that I could have answers in 15 minutes that normally would take people days to come up with. And I've been using it. I was a beta tester probably 15 years ago, 12 years ago. And it has been the go-to tool. So if this is as promising as just the GIST software is, I can't imagine how you'd go forward without having access to tools like this. Granted, you want them safe, obviously, you want them secure, but not having them is going to be a far greater risk as time goes on, I believe, in terms of competitiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not investigating, and so I always tell people, if you're not investigating the use of these tools now, um, you're already late to the game. And if because yes, there are certain times and certain things in certain scenarios, like for example, you don't want to just go onto chatgpt.com and type in sensitive information. And no, that's a unnecessary risk. And it's going to get used in the training data, et cetera. But there are plenty of tools out there that you don't have those kinds of problems with. So if you are being put off by using AI because of the parade of horribles, um, you're missing, you're behind in the learning curve is what I'm trying to say. And then as these tools get better, other people are already used to using them and they know what they're good for, they know what they're not good for, and advances. If you wait until this is all ironclad and across the board perfect, like it is the Star Trek computer, you're gonna probably be out of business by the time you get there, because there's all kinds of people using these tools for a lot of reasons. Ideation, what we're talking about today, for example, and they're getting ahead. They're just getting ahead of you. Um, so let's talk about, and looks like we have about 5 minutes left or so. Wanted to talk about the best practices for documenting and disclosing the actual human contributions versus the AI contributions. And I think we talked about this in the green room. I don't think it's come up specifically, or we kind of danced around it. But what do you do? What do you think are best practices for making sure that you have um, knowledge long term down the road after your short term memory is gone, as to what you did, how you did it, and who did it? In the who meaning the AI versus the human. And why I see this as an issue is simply just through the natural course of prosecution, claims are going to get cut, claims are going to be removed, and if you wind up and removing all the stuff that the human contributed, and the only thing that's left is what the AI contributed, well, now you've got everywhere in the world a problem. And that problem, again, in the patent system is not a problem getting it through by the examiner. It's what if that comes up after this has already been determined to be the billion-dollar invention? Well, if the law doesn't change, it's going to go poof, right? So what do you think are the best practices for keeping I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it, an invention record?
Well, Gene, I think it's exactly that. I think the notes feature in our software is a great place to start, but keeping detailed records is really critical. And, it could even come up in the examination process. I mean, for example, a Rule 105 request. I know those are extremely rare, but that could be made, and there could be information asked about inventorship in one of those requests. So it could definitely come up, but I would also emphasize to people that this isn't the only thing you have to be worried about. You still have all your other obligations to the USPTO, probably one of the most important being your duty of disclosure of information that's material to patentability. So don't lose sight of those other obligations and overly focus on this AI inventorship conception issue. Keep all your obligations in mind to the US Patent Office in order to ensure you have a successful prosecution.
Yeah. Chris or Joe, anything to add there?
I would say in using IP.com, just the reports that you're able to generate, including those notes, for us act as a benchmark or as a kind of stamp in the project line. So, well, we back up everything that we're reporting, and we even make additional reports that have other information that are germane to it. But those for us give a good roadmap of where the idea came from, who was responsible for developing that idea, and then which parts were instigated by AI, but then developed by humans. Because in our case, that's how all of it's going to be. It will instigate with AI, but the real work is, once the engineering team takes that report and takes those innovative ideas and then go implements them. So and then separating the idea from the implementation is what we do as well.
Yeah, I'd much rather go to court with the AI's record of the ideation session than people's bad memories of a bunch of people in a room with a bunch of Post-it notes and who invented what and how was the final invention come about, where you have a digital record of the whole exchange from beginning to end. What better record would you want to proceed with if you had to show some documentation?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think you have to be aggressively using the notes and keeping track of these things. And luckily, these systems are going to be, as long as you're using the features and tools that are adjacent to the actual work that's going on in the background, you should be fine to do this. And the thing is I do think people want to give some thought about this in the same way where you would give some thought as to, well, what do I keep after the application has been filed? You know, the way we used to go through and purge the file to get rid of certain things and you only keep certain things. You're going to want to have a policy here. But the policy, I think, is going to need to not only try and make sure that you have a good invention record, but that you have a quote unquote correct invention record as to who did what specifically. And because the memory 5, 10 years down the road, it's just not going to be there. And then when these things get litigated, even 10 to 15 years later, after they're out of prosecution, I mean, it's hard enough to know what you filed and where it came from when 2 or 3 years later you start getting the office actions. So having this information, I think, is going to be very useful, and making sure you have a policy. And one thing I meant to say earlier is, and I know we're right at the top of the hour. Before we lose everybody, I want to give you guys an opportunity to wrap up. My final thought here is we've mentioned a couple times now about having use policies and knowing what's going on in the people who are using the tools. One of the greatest things I think I heard recently from somebody who was in charge of creating policies for their company is I would rather have an imperfect policy that people actually follow than the perfect policy that nobody is going to follow. So you do have, I mean, there's the best practices, this is the way is absolutely perfectly appropriate to do. And then there's, okay, what are your people actually going to be able to do and input and keep track of and do on an going forward basis? And that really, I think, has to be some thought as well, because you don't want to adopt policies that nobody's going to adhere to. So that's my final thought. Let's go around the horn. Jim, I'll give you the final word. Joe, let's start with you. What do you hope people remember from today?
Don't fear AI. Use it in your job. It's important. It's like the internet. It's like word processors. Yeah. If you're late to the game, you're out of the game, and you need this.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Joe.
And
Greg.
I want to add one
go
other thing too. Having
Sure.
been deposed in a patent infringement suit, it's really good to be able to say, yeah, I contributed to claim 5, 7, 3, and 9. And that experience will help you follow the rules.
Yes, great. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Joe. Chris.
For me, it's about the landscape changing, and if you want to be competitive, you have to change with the landscape and not wait for it to change and then try to catch up. So implementing these tools, it's important to dive in now while the tools are still in development, while the tools are still being early adopted, and stake your claim there. Because in 5 years, it's going to be too late, and you'll already be so far behind the ball that it's going to be difficult to catch up and then even learn how to use the tools appropriately. So for me, it's about adaptation, and these tools give us competitive edge. And right now, it's a competitive edge, but in 3 years, it will be a handicap if you're not using it. So there's no better time than to start using these tools than now. The best time would have been 2 years ago, but a lot of these tools weren't available 2 years ago. So we are at a unique moment in time where the power of these tools is just now being realized. So there's really no better time than to begin using them than now.
Right. I couldn't agree more. Thanks a lot, Chris. Really appreciate you being here. And Jim, the final word goes to you. What do you hope that people leave today remembering?
Sure. Well, I hope, building on what Chris said, people realize that now is the time to start using generative AI software like IQ Ideas Plus. And I would hope that the PANU factors, which we talked a lot about during this call, are not major change in practice to what people were already doing. I think if you read them, you'll see that they're really consistent with a lot of long established practices in terms of inventorship.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you guys. I thought that was a fascinating conversation. I know we didn't get to all the questions that were asked. We'll make sure that we try and get you guys an answer to follow up with after the session. And we appreciate IP.com sponsoring this conversation. And if you'd like to try and schedule a demo or test drive to learn more about, for example, the ideation process that we went over here today, feel free to reach out to them and they'll find a time and answer any questions you have. But that's all that we have for today. I really appreciate you spending some time with us here, and we hope to see you again soon. But bye for now, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you.